Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. Hope you're doing well. I hope you had a lovely Easter. I am wearing my Easter outfit from yesterday, and it's now Easter Monday, we used to call it. I'm not going to church today. I've had quite a lot of church in the last week and really had a nice time, a nice Easter. Joe and I went to Mass and then we went to brunch. It was really a lovely celebration. So today I'm going to start my first in a series on the Omen franchise, beginning with the first film, The Omen, and the book. But before I get there, I just wanted to mention a couple things. So I did read two new books, like new for me books, this week, which is a bit of a progressive thing for me. I'm trying to read not only more newer fiction, but some of the newer books that I got from StokerCon last summer. So this book has been around quite a while, but it's my first time reading it. I do believe Patrick sent me this book, so thanks again, Patrick, if it was indeed you. I'm pretty sure it was. He sent me so many books. I don't remember them all, but I do appreciate them all. And this one is called I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I think it's pronounced Ian or Ian. Nice short read, 2016, so not that long ago. And it's also a film. It has all kinds of praise. I mean, this was a debut for this author, highly successful. This book started out great, but I did not like the ending. I did not like the twist ending. I thought it was cliche, and it was kind of, well, I don't want to give it away. If I say what I'm thinking, I will be giving a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it. But I gave this one 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it all the way up to the ending, and then I thought, yeah, cheap. And then I read a book that was I got from StokerCon. I believe this was in the StokerCon gift bag. So this is a heavily promoted book. This is Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. Cool cover. This book itself, I have to say it was a little distracting though. It has like some cool artwork throughout. It's all black. And then, so you can't even read the type, which is fine. And every chapter starts with this brick wall. But also the regular pages also have this like brick motif. And I found it hard to read because of my eyesight. And I don't know if anyone else felt that way, but I'm like, it looks cool, but it made my reading a little tough. But anyway, I like this one. I read it in one day, I think. It was a really short read. It kind of reminded me of Salem's Lot in a way, and also of Phantasm, my favorite horror film of all times, with like the tall man. There's kind of a tall man character named Crawley. Okay, so the name is a bit on the nose. There's some things about this that are a bit on the nose like that with the names. I thought it was very entertaining and really well done, actually. I enjoyed it. So before I get to the Omen, I also wanted to mention that I did see a movie, a new horror film called Immaculate, starring Sydney Sweeney. Ah, my gosh. I have so many thoughts about this film. Grumpy Andrew's Horror House did a really interesting review on it, which made me want to go see it. And I'm glad I saw it. However, I just really found it very disturbing. And it might have been the fact that I watched it before Easter Sunday. I mean, I know like I'm reading The Omen and all these like religious horror books. And hey, it's easy to go after the Catholics. We've got this wonderful Gothic architecture and weird nuns and creepy priests and stuff, and those confessional booths. I mean, it's very Gothic, and I get it. I mean, I love the Gothic aspect of the Catholic Church. That's one reason why I returned to it. But honestly, I found this movie, I can't say it offended me. I felt shame at the end of this movie. The ending is so repulsive that it was the first time I'd actually watched a movie that I can remember, maybe ever, where I actually, I had to leave while it was still dark because I couldn't make eye contact with anyone as I'm leaving the theater. It felt like a shameful experience. Now, I'm not holding that against Andrew. I am actually glad I watched it because I'm trying to watch newer horror stuff. In fact, I'm going to go see the new Omen this week, and I don't know if I can handle any more Catholic bashing, but I might have set myself up for that one. All right, so let's start with The Omens. Okay, so it came out in 1976, directed by Richard Donner and written by David Seltzer, who also wrote the adaptation. And this is really good. And stars the incredible Gregory Peck and Lee Remick as the Thornes, this wealthy American couple. Robert Thorne, he's Jeremy in the book, but Robert sounds better than Jeremy. Robert sounds more like, has the gravitas. And Gregory Peck really brings the gravitas and that wonderful bass voice to this role. He is that wonderful masculine character that he brings that kind of presence. And Lee Remick is so beautiful in this movie and so tragic that she really pulls at the heartstrings. So I find that this couple, this beautiful, she talks about, oh, we're, when they have a discussion about Damien, when she starts to realize something's terribly wrong, that, oh, well, beautiful people, we're the beautiful people, we're successful. And I like when she said that. She's very sarcastic when she said that, like, what could be wrong with our child? The fact that this story is based on this secret, this big secret that only Robert Thorne is keeping this secret from his wife, that Damien is not their real child, that their child died in childbirth or soon after it was born. He didn't want to tell her because it would destroy her. So that's how it starts out. They're in Rome. He's rushing to get to the hospital. When he gets there, it's a Catholic hospital because we're in Rome. And the priest tells him that, sorry, the baby died. In the book, it gets more into her history with mental health issues. She's a fragile person. And they just kind of hint at it in the movie. And also in Lee Remick's excellent acting. Like, she brings that fragility to the role. But really, she is, call it women's intuition. She's the Cassandra of the story. She knows something's wrong, but because, she's a woman, maybe she's hysterical. She needs to go on Valium and go to a therapist because something's not right. She's having these terrible thoughts about Damien. Well, she's, of course, absolutely right, but only too late do we realize that. So in Rome, Father Spoleto, kind of a creepy priest, tells Thorne, well, you know what, your baby died, but there just happens to be this baby that was born exactly the same time. There's a baby, and the mother died, and he's beautiful. And, well, what about the mother? What about her family? Thorne asks. Oh, she's just, I don't know. She's nobody. She's a peasant. Now she has no family. Take this baby, take it in the place of your baby, and raise him as your son. He's got thick black hair, and there's something very biblical about that story, and so it's already starting on this foundation of tragedy. This tragic flaw, this big lie. That this very noble, this very upstanding man, this ambassador, wealthy, classy, is holding on to this great lie, or if you want to call it a sin or whatever. We go through this kind of happy montage of watching Damien grow up. There's a scene where it shows them fooling around in the house. You can tell they're still sexy with each other. They're still in love. And in this one scene, they're walking and they misplace Damien, and there's sort of a panic. Did he fall into this water? Maybe things would have been better off if he had, but I'm not sure why that scene was included, but it kind of maybe foreshadows what's going to happen, or it foreshadows their feelings of desperation that this one child, sometimes when a couple only is able to have that one child, that child is treated like this hothouse flower. There's not just go out and play. It's no, we have to make sure to keep this child alive and safe. Flash forward, we're in Damien's 5th birthday party, and this is when the story really starts to get going as far as all the evil that's going to escalate. So Damien has this lovely young nanny, and there's this kind of this moment of tension between Kathy, Lee Remick's character, and the nanny, and they go into a little more of it into the book. It's interesting to see the author of the screenplay add those details to the book, because then you see that it really is underneath the screenplay and in the film, if you get what I'm saying. Although in the film, in the book, the nanny is dressed as a clown with clown makeup. I'm wondering why they made that change in the film. Would it have been scarier when she hangs herself if she is dressed as a clown? Or maybe the director just said, that's too much. We don't need her to look like a clown. It's actually scarier when she's this like young, wholesome looking woman nanny. It is really scary that when she jumps off the second story or the third story, I don't remember, of the mansion. Although I think her shoes would have fallen off. I did notice that this time, just nitpicking a little bit. I think her shoes would have come off, especially when she crashes through the window. That scene is very powerful. And before she does that, we see the dog for the first time, the Rottweiler, the Hellhound, if you want to call it. I don't think the dog has a name, except maybe Hellhound. But yeah, and the dog is kind of like hypnotizing her into doing what she's doing, because I don't believe that she is in on it the way Mrs. Baylock is. So this horrible thing happens. It's a terrible foreshadowing of the evil that's going to come into the Thornes' lives. And Jennings, the photographer, played wonderfully by David Warner. So he's probably thinking, I have to do this tacky kids party. But he actually gets a great scoop with this horrible thing that happens with the nanny. And David Warner, who was a Shakespearean actor. We've seen him in a lot of British horror films that we love from that time period. He just has that great haircut, that mod haircut, and just a great look. In the book, he's a lot cruder. He does have a little bit of a sleaze. I mean, nothing against photographers, but that's kind of a cliche. The sleazy photographer is a bit of a cliche. I've met a few sleazy photographers in my time, and I've also met some non-sleazy photographers, but I think you know what I mean. It's a type, it's a character. David Warner plays him perfectly. So yeah, that was a horrible event that takes place. So the next day when Thorne shows up at the embassy, Jennings is there taking pictures, because now there are a lot of photographers wanting to know about, get a scoop on what happened with the nanny, what a horrible thing. And we see Thorne losing composure, and throughout the film he's going to lose more and more composure. And it's wonderful to see Gregory Peck, this man who's such dignity, gravitas and dignity, become like more and more like, not unhinged is not the right word, because he never loses his sanity, which is what makes it such a tragedy, what happens to him. But the layers of composure are stripped away, and his rage starts to come out. Thorne shows up at the job, and he breaks Jennings' camera, and he's like, I'll pay for it, and Jennings is like, no, you owe me one, mate. So these two are going to join forces, and a very unlikely, wonderful pair in the second half of the film. So the priest shows up, Father Brennan. He comes in, and Thorne thinks comes into his office, rather. Thorne thinks he's some religious fanatic, because he's saying, repent, you must take confession, you communion, you must repent. And Thorne's like, all right, get this man out of here. I gave it the office, And then he says something about your son and your son's mother. And there's this wonderful moment where he says, you're talking about my wife? And he's like, no, his mother was and he's just about to say jackal when the door flies open and the guards come in and rush him out. I always thought the jackal mother was one of the scariest parts of this story. Is there something significant about the jackal, like in biblical history? Or if you have any information about that, I mean, I know that the jackal is like a wild dog found in Africa, maybe India as well, I'm not sure. It's a lowly animal, being a scavenger, so maybe that's why it's so demonic. Because evil is low. It really is, and I think that's part of what makes it so horrifying. It's so wrong, it's so wrong, and it's so right for a horror film to have an animal be part of the birth. Oh, and also Father Brennan says its mother was a jackal. I thought that was a really powerful scene, and really well acted by, of course, Gregory Peck and the actor who plays Father Brennan. I love his death scene, like when he's running and he's trying to get into the church. This movie, it has such great characters and great depth. And the more I look into it, the more I appreciate all the wonderful layers that make such a great story. And this is what I found that movie, Immaculate, was really missing. Jennings is there, and when they kick out Father Brennan, and he takes a photograph of him. And this is part of the plot with the shadows, these weird shadows. It showed one up in the nanny. And then we see Jennings in his dark room with a red light, developing his film and seeing these weird shadows. Kathy is starting to have like a little bit of like these neuroses about Damien. We're not really sure why. Mrs. Baylock shows up. Mrs. Baylock, played by Billie Whitelaw, is an incredibly iconic character. She, very different from the book. In the book, she's a heavy-set woman where the actress Billie Whitelaw is very slim, and she just has this big, scary grin and these wild eyes. Like, it's perfect casting. I wonder if that's why they changed it, because they got Billie Whitelaw to do it, and they're like, oh, she's perfect. Also in the book, Mrs. Baylock is not only heavy set, but she does weird things, like goes out in the middle of the night to defecate in the forest. Like, I thought that was a really, talk about low, creepy detail. Like, she's like animalistic. The animal part of evil always kind of shows up in these good religious horror films. Evil is depicted as being like low and being an animalistic, going in the forest. Well, sometimes you don't have a choice, but leaving a mansion to go into the forest to do your business is a little bit weird. And also, she sleeps with like a full set of like whorish, those are the words from the book, makeup, like she's a harlot, like she's making herself a whore for Satan as she's laying in her bed with, snoring. She's grotesque in the book and grotesque in a different way in the movie. And also something I got from the book, this reading, which I didn't remember, is that her name means like Baal, like the demon. I don't know if it's pronounced Baal or Baal, but that's where her name comes from. So she is a disciple of hell, and she has some supernatural powers because she's connected. Like in this story, and just on a broader sense about like religious horror, this story, all the Omen books and movies assume that like Satan's real, which means God is also real, that there is a good versus evil thing going on in this world, in this universe. But this movie kind of assumes that there is, and I think that it still works on that level. Like, you sort of buy into it. I'm wondering if like someone who's really an atheist watching this, would it really have the same kind of power? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you understand what I'm trying to say. Does it still have the same punch? I mean, it does for me, but it might not for everyone. Billie Whitelaw doesn't need any kind of garish makeup to look scary. She just does. I'm sure she was a nice lady in real life. And nobody's ever made a set of blue pajamas look that frightening. When she attacks Thorne at the end, like just this feral demon attacking him, like tooth and nail. It's great. I think it's going to be my Halloween costume this year, is blue pajamas with my hair wild and then like a skewer and a fork, like a barbecue skewer. I'm not sure exactly what those. It was like a big fork and like a skewer like stuck in my temple and neck. That's a great idea for a costume. Okay, so these things start showing up that kind of reveal that Damien is a devil spawn. Of course, the audience knows, but the Thornes don't know. So we're watching these horrible things happen to this couple. They take him to this fancy society wedding, and Kathy's wearing this great blue dress with this turban with her blue eyes. I mean, Lee Remick is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I know she died pretty young of cancer. It's really sad, but she's probably about 40 years old in this movie and never looked more elegant and more gorgeous, and a really good actress. They take Damien to this wedding, and he freaks out when they try to pull up to the church because he can't stand any kind of these, the sign of the cross or whatever. He attacks, has a tantrum and rips that turban off his mother's head, and they drive off. Something's just wrong. Kathy's having these fears. She wants to see a psychiatrist. She's not well. Thorne is just bearing all of this. And there's these wonderful scenes, these domestic scenes of them in the bedroom, and you really get the sense that this couple, they really love each other, and it just makes it that much more tragic. And he's, I guess, out of protection, he's or maybe guilt and shame. He's not telling her, well, your instincts are right. There is something wrong with our son, and it's time that we talk about it and confront it. He's just trying to just be strong and do his job. He's got he has a very important job to do. He really doesn't want to hear about this crap. And Mrs. Baylock's taking care of Damien. Everything's fine, right? Wrong. Father Brennan confronts Thorne again at a soccer game, or what they would call football, I guess, in the UK. And he tells him that Damien's the son of Satan, that Kathy is pregnant, and that he's going to try to kill her and her unborn child. Well, again, Gregory Peck thinks this man is just a maniac, a religious maniac. He's just like, you just stay away from me, in that wonderful booming voice, stay away from me. Father Brennan's like, I'll see you in hell, Thorne. But that whole scene where the wind is blowing and, the devil is at work and Brennan's trying to get into the church for refuge and banging on the door. And it's great. And the weather vane impales him. And then there's this complete silence. This is a very artistic film. Okay, so then Kathy later tells Robert that she's pregnant. So Father Brennan was right. This is, again, upsetting to Thorne, but he still keeps quiet. The evil's starting to ramp up. Now, we come to this, I think, is probably the best, except for the cemetery scene, which I think is equally good. I think we come to one of the most famous and one of the best sequences in the film, and that is when Kathy falls off the railing. It's just a masterclass in the building of suspense, the way the sound is, the music. I haven't even mentioned the music. Jerry Goldsmith won an Oscar for this score. It's like a kind of as reminiscent of Carmina Burana. It's this like satanic Latin mass. It's really, really scary. Just listening to the music is scary. That whole scene with the goldfish bowl. We have this artsy shot with the goldfish bowl exploding. It's just like incredible foreshadowing. There's like even like a Dutch tilt in that sequence, with the canted angle of Damien like riding his tricycle around and under the watchful gaze of Mrs. Baylock, and she opens the door, like once the kid gets really wound up. There is a remake that came out in 2006 that I was going to rewatch it for this, but I didn't have it. I didn't want to buy it because I know it's a crappy movie. I didn't like it, but I watched that sequence. It's kind of like a shot-for-shot remake. It just really makes you wonder why. With Mia Farrow playing Mrs. Baylock and sort of like Rosemary Woodhouse has gone over to the dark side. And they don't even have the fishbowl in the remake. It's just the plant falls. Now why? I mean, maybe it's because they didn't want to kill the fish. Well, can't you use prop fish? I don't know. Without the use of CGI and showing how she falls, and I'm not sure how they did achieve that effect, but it's done so beautifully well, and it's really, really horrifying. Of course, she loses the baby. Father Brennan predicted this. So Kathy's now in the hospital. Her arm is in this cast like this. And Jennings calls and wants to meet with Thorne. They go to Father Brennan's room, which is this little room at the church that's this scared me too. I remember the first time I watched it. It still scares me. Plastered with pages from the Bible and crucifixes. He's trying to keep evil away because he knows his soul is damned because of what he did. He was in on the whole baby switcheroo, the whole plan. Jennings points out that he has that Father Brennan has the 666 birthmark. Jennings also points out that from the papers of Father Brennan, what is the actual omen? The omen is a star that appears in Europe, like the Star of Bethlehem, only the inverse of that he's going to be born June the 6th at 6 a.m. And then Jennings points out, well, I have a vested interest in this story and I want to get to the bottom of it. It's important to you because of what's happening with your family. Well, I caught a picture of myself, a reflection in the mirror that shows this shadow going like this. So that's not a good sign. So he wants to get to the bottom of it too. So Kathy's moved to a private room. Mrs. Baylock is a picture of domesticity. All the other staff in the house have left in the middle of the night. I wonder why. So Mrs. Baylock's going to stay and take care of Damien. And Thorne and Jennings fly to Rome to go to the hospital where Damien was born. But it was destroyed by fire right afterwards. All the records were burned. Most of the staff died in the fire, except for Father Spoleto, remember him? They go to this old monastery, and he is still there, horribly scarred from being burned, and he's able to write out the name of this cemetery, which is this old Etruscan cemetery, which I thought was a really interesting choice. So the Etruscans were an ancient Italian civilization before the Roman Empire. It was kind of absorbed by the Roman Empire that had their own pantheon of pagan gods. Damien's mother, which they're not really sure at this point what they're dealing with, and Thorne's child are buried in a pagan graveyard, basically, is what I'm trying to say. The graveyard scene, I think, is one of that whole sequence is one of the best in the film. It's one of the best in Gothic horror in cinema of all time, in my opinion. It's done so well, and it's so Gothic. And I love the pairing of Jennings and Thorne, two very different men joining together on this mission and supporting each other. The scene where they remove the slab and see the jackal skeleton is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And when they drop, Thorne drops the slab and it just breaks on it. And then his own son's body is there, the infant child with a smashed in skull. So it's like the child didn't die. They killed it. Spoleto and Brennan and their evil disciples of Satan. It's all planned because they need to get Damien in the household where he will be able to rise to power. Of course, there's all this biblical references in that is also part of the Omen. I should mention the book of Revelation predicts it all. They are chased out of the cemetery by wild hellhounds, trying to tear them apart. They climb over this fence. Thorne gets the fence point right in his armpit. In the book, that's really that whole scene is really well done too. So Thorne is falling apart. He really is. He's getting beaten up, which is what you always need to do to your hero. He calls Kathy and says, leave the hospital immediately. I don't care if your arm's in a cast, sticking straight up in the air. You've got to go now. I'm going to send my friend to pick you up. And don't tell anyone. Just get dressed and go. And fly to Rome immediately. So she's like, oh, okay, all right. And this wonderful scene where, and really scary scene where this poor woman's pulling this, struggling to get out of this nightgown, this like sheer peignoir. She looks through it, and again, we have this incredible shot of just Lee Remick's face frozen in fear with those beautiful eyes just bugged open. And there's Mrs. Baylock, Grumpy Andrew's Horror House review of The Omen. He does a great review of this movie. He says something really funny about like pulling off a shirt and getting it stuck and thinking like Mrs. Baylock's going to be in the room. And that's so true. There's something very scary about that moment with that grin. Kathy comes flying out the window, 2 falls. She survives the first one, doesn't survive the second one. It's really, really scary. And she lands in the ambulance. It's really horrifying. It's never schlocky. It's done so seriously, and the acting is so good. But you really see Robert's grief, his intense grief, and Jennings is kind of there, and he's just like curled up, just laying on the bed with blood, and just the suffering is too much. Thorne and Jennings continue their search for the truth. They go to Israel, to the town of Medigo, I think it's pronounced Medigo, which means Armageddon. And they meet up with the Antichrist expert, Carl Bugenhagen. He tells Jennings to, this isn't for your ears. I've got to talk to the father here, or the stepfather, if you want to call it that. Damien is the Antichrist. He gives him the whole spiel, backed up by all the biblical facts and the Omen. Thorne needs to kill Damien with these daggers, 7 daggers, and he has to do it in a certain way. You have to instruct him on how to do it. So, and that scene is also very powerful because now we are talking about killing a child. He and Jennings are walking through the streets of this town, and Jennings is like, what did he say? I have a right to know. They're arguing, and Gregory Peck is like, Emma, have I lost my mind? I can't kill a child. I won't do it. And he throws the daggers, and then Jennings is like, well, if you won't do it, I will. Now, one thing you need to know about the Omen is if you're worried about getting killed, don't be around construction sites or anything with heavy equipment ever. And we get to the famous, probably the goriest Grand Guignol moment in this film that is pretty awesome when although I love Jennings, he's one of my favorite characters, but that's what makes it so scary and horrifying is this truck carrying sheets of glass. Something's making it move on its own. You really get the idea in this film that the devil is pulling the strings and being a trickster. Jennings' head is cut off from every possible slow motion angle. If you don't, if you blink and you open your eyes, you're going to catch it again from a different angle. Just the filmmaker was just in love with this moment, and it is really horrifying. And the head lands, and you can see the reflection in this glass. And Gregory Peck's reaction is so perfect. Just the horror. Then you see him flying back on like a nice little private jet with the daggers. So he's going to do the deed. So he shows up back at the house. It's really dark. It's really scary. Mrs. Baylock's there, and Bugenhagen says that she will fight to the death. Thorne knows what he's up against, and he wants to be sure, though, so he grabs the manicure shears and cuts away at Damien's hair until he sees the 666 on his scalp. Mrs. Baylock, pounces. There's this wonderful scene where he's trying to drag Damien down the stairs. She's just this, like I said, a demon fighting him. We have this amazing scene where the kitchen drawer comes out and boom. I just think that scene is so good. Like they commit to that so well. And it's be interesting to see how they shot that with stunt doubles and how much that actress was really, it looks really like she and Gregory Peck are just like wrestling on the kitchen floor. It's great. So then Thorne drags Damien into the car. They fly out of the mansion. One of the guards at the gate alerts the police. The ambassador is driving away from the house like a maniac. They follow him to the church. Damien must be killed on hallowed ground, and he drags him up to the altar. Back in the late 70s, we still have this idea that there is this hallowed ground that will give protection, or at least make the deed, be able to complete the deed of killing the Antichrist. It's like when, the holy water hits Regan and it burns her, that holy water has meaning. So he's there, he's just about to kill the kid. And according to like some stories I heard about and read online, this kid was a hellion on the set. He kicked the director in the crotch. He was bumming cigarettes off the crew, like this craziness. But right before he's going to put in the first dagger in the heart to kill him, "No, Daddy, no! Don't, Daddy, stop!" In this beautiful little English accent, Thorne weakens. And just at that moment, the detective, lieutenant, whatever, plainclothes lieutenant or lieutenant, whatever they call them in England, comes flying through the door. "Stop or I'll shoot!" Thorne's going to kill him, and we see this amazing, another very artsy shot, slow-mo bullet coming out of the chamber of the gun. Cut to the funeral scene. Thorne and Kathy are being buried in this very military-style funeral. The President of the United States and his wife are there holding Damien's hand. We have this idea that now Damien is going to be adopted by the President and the First Lady, and he now will be in a position of power. It's a little bit of a different story going into book 2, or the second film, and which I will also be doing a video about, but it's a great ending. And there is the famous story that the director told Damien, the child actor, turn around and look at the camera, but whatever you do, don't smile. And you see the kid trying to hold it back, but of course the smile comes, the evil smile. And it's awesome. It's a great ending. Those are my thoughts about The Omen and the book, which is definitely worth a read. I highly recommend, if you love the movie, that you read the book too, because it's really good. So I know I missed some things. I know I might have gotten a couple things wrong. Maybe you'll let me know in the comments below, or if you have anything else to add to what I discussed about The Omen or other things I mentioned today, I would love to hear your thoughts. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Hey guys, I'm just doing a quick vlog. I'm about to go to see the new Omen film. Kind of a weird day because we had an earthquake and there's an eclipse coming on Monday. So I'm feeling something in the air, but I'm going to go in now. It's kind of a little bit of a dark day. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm a weirdo going to see a movie. I'll probably be the only one in there. Last time I went to the movies was last week, and I saw another religious horror film called Immaculate, and I'm still shaking from the trauma of that film. So I will let you know how it goes when I come out. Okay, it's after the film. I'm treating myself to some Thai food, and I have to say I really enjoyed the first Omen a lot. I was pleasantly surprised at how good it was. It was very stylish. It was interesting. It had depth. It did have some things that I was a little bit confused about near the end, and something that maybe I would have liked to have seen different, but overall, it was an excellent prequel, and I'm really happy I saw it.